Raie,
How are you?
I'm good. I was really channeling my inner Raie this morning when I was in red lipstick for this, so I'm so ready. I'm so happy
I'm
to be here with
loving
you.
it. I went pink today because I'm celebrating Kamala Harris. We love red for AOC. Like we gotta bring in the lip colors.
We really do. We really do. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here and so happy to see you. So
Good to be. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Like I've been looking forward to it all day. I'm so glad that we planned this in advance because I am looking for outlets to talk about what we're in right now,
mhm.
and you are the perfect person for this. So let's just jump in. Welcome to those that are joining us. Thank you to those that have been tuning in every single Thursday. Welcome to our CJL Spotlight Conversations. We host these every single Thursday from 4 to 4:30 p.m. We bring in community leaders to talk about the work that they are doing in their communities and how it relates to our mission this year at the Center for Justice and Law, which is health, justice, and the law, as well as how it connects to the elections. Today, we're going to be talking about what happened, what is to come, and the perfect person that I could think of to have this conversation with is here with us today. Her name is Yu. I'm going to her introduce herself, but Yu is a political and community organizer. She's been doing this for a long time now, and me and her are going to be in conversation today to talk about, the elections happened. We've been advocating for, we've been saying get out the vote for months now, and the question becomes, what now? We had the elections. We still don't know the outcome, but what happens next? So, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Raie. God, what a wonderful introduction. And likewise, being able to have a conversation moderated by you, I'm so excited. But yes, hi, everybody. I see folks on, most folks I do know, but I want to reintroduce myself. You do, she, her, hers pronouns. I am a community and political organizer in the Twin Cities and rural Minnesota, and I'm really happy to be here. And, I've been looking forward to this conversation for weeks, but I think especially after our election day 2 days ago. What a maybe perfect's not the right word. What a good time to have this conversation is what I want to say.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. I know there's a whole bunch of emotions out there right now, and I think folks are looking for a place to talk. So I'm just curious. Let's just dive right in. Is like, what are your post-election reflections? I know we don't have a winner right now, um, but we do know the outcomes of a lot of Minnesota races, whether it's at the House or the local level. So I'm curious, like, what are your overall reflections in terms of like, what have we gained, what have we lost, and what needs to come next?
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's such a great question. And honestly, I'm going to start at the national level and go into local and state because I think we all are thinking the same thing, with national. And it really isn't that big of a surprise given that, everyone in the field, political theorists were actually, had their, hypothesis on how Trump would act election day and election night. And I'm not surprised that he, before the mail-in ballots were counted, that he declared himself that he won. And now that the mail-in ballots are coming in and states are, on the precipice of having declaring a president for our 46th president, now he's saying that there's voter fraud and that, that there's all this stuff going on that's working against him. I personally am not surprised by that. And I think that the most important thing as BIPOC women, as BIPOC folks, as folks of marginalized identities, and so on, the thing I want to emphasize the most right now is just taking care of yourself. We're at the precipice of, knowing who will be the next president. And with that comes a lot of fear, a lot of unknown uncertainty, a lot of anxiety. And I think people need to take care of themselves first and really just prioritize themselves. And I know, and I'm included in this too, I have that thing going on all day looking at the queen said, oh God, and looking at the results every day. But, sometimes I just need to be I need to take a break. I need to eat. I need to drink water. I need to do stuff for myself. So I want to just send that out to everybody to just as much as you can try to take care of yourself in this time and not try to get too engulfed in the media that surround us. But I think overall my reflections for the local and state races, I was surprised by some of the pleasantly and also not so pleasantly surprised at some of the state races, because I saw, a very historic voter turnout. Omar Fateh got elected to be a state senator. Lindsey Port won. I'm trying to think of other state leaders. Heather Keeler over at the Moorhead area, and like Amy Waswick, who's the campaign that I was working on this summer, got reelected by 98 votes, and that was that was a close one, Erin Murphy, Khalid Her, who I was working on. So like statewide, I think we have a lot of great women of color, BIPOC folks of marginalized identities coming up into our state legislature, which is so great. But then there's also seats that I didn't anticipate being lost at the state level, which I thought were, and that's how it goes, like every vote counts. And I'm really sad that we lost some seats in the state legislature, both in the House and the Senate. But I think overall, seeing the number of people of color that just ran this year, and seeing so many of them winning was a really nice refresher from what's happening at national politics. So those are my initial reflections. I'm really excited to get back into state government and doing policy work at the state level, given that seeing so many women of color and people of color in office coming up in this next cycle. But yeah, national, definitely. I'm with you all. It's very anxiety inducing. I'm scared for myself, but I'm trying to, remind others to take care of themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I love that you actually started with self-care. I've been, I work with Ignite National, and we actually developed like we just posted about taking care of yourself, maybe not staying at the TV all day, finding something to do. It's super important. And I'm also thinking about our dear Audre Lorde, who said that taking care of yourself, self-care, is an act of political warfare when we have systems that are designed to destruct us. So I think that's a beautiful statement. Thank you. A lot like you, I was also, in terms of Minnesota politics, I was also very surprised in some cases, and pleasantly surprised, and also unpleasantly surprised. So it was good seeing a lot of women of color running, and we can see that all across the country. Cori Bush in Missouri is someone who I think of. We have a new trans lawmaker, Sarah McBride. I mean, like, we are seeing some pretty outstanding historic elections all across the country, which for me is really nice to see. I'm curious though, like, we've been talking about getting out the vote for so long, and I think some folks, regardless of what happened on the national level, are not going to be satisfied. Like, maybe they're not that interested in Biden. They're definitely not interested in Trump, and they're kind of sitting in this middle of like, where do I find my place? What do you say to those people? Like, what do you say to those people, and what do you say to the folks that are like, what do we need to do now?
Yeah, and that's a really great question, Raie. And like, and as political organizers and people who are really passionate about the work, and a lot of the work impacts us directly, it's really hard to, at least for myself, wrap my mind around this. There's some people who really either aren't interested or don't have an avenue to get into politics and really have no interest. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around those people. But at the same time, I want to like take a step back and look at it from a very wide perspective, and like looking at it like, no matter if you're progressive or conservative or Republican or Democrat, politics is divided in every way, shape, and form these days. So at the same time, I understand that, like, yes, as women of color, like, so much is on the line for us and other marginalized communities. But on the flip side, I see why people, even though they might have something they will have something personal at stake, that they don't want to get into it because it's just so divisive and just can get very, like, toxic at times. So I really feel for those people. And honestly, the way that, I have been, like, talking to folks who aren't really interested is that, like, get involved in the local and state levels. Like, and if you're really like not into the partisan place, like the partisan game, like, don't even get into state level first. Just go into your local levels of government. Start with your neighborhood councils, like I started at the Hamline Midway. Start with your local city council. Start with your county commissioners, because those levels of government generally are nonpartisan. Like, like, people might have their own personal beliefs when they're in those positions, but really those positions, it really doesn't get that contested, you know, like we were talking about the issues that impact our daily life, but we don't even think about, like trash pickup, you know, like the parks and recreation, and you know, and like the like issues that are still important, but people don't really all the time think about that this is political, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to him. Yes, shout out to Hamline Midway. But yeah, so that's how I would say, like, start with your local and go from there. You know, get involved in your local communities, understand the issues that are impacting your local, and then, you know, since it's nonpartisan, it's a lot easier for you to you know, maybe be more comfortable talking about your views and how you think local government should be, and like how, you know, like, so like that's how I would approach to people, like get involved locally and see from there, because I understand that national and statewide can be very divisive at times. So local is really where it's at to start. And, you know, and even if you don't want to get involved in local right away, like even just supporting people, you know, or maybe people in your network that are running for office, you know, like, you know, like that can be political, but sometimes, like, you know, like the easiest thing you can do is just drop some stuff at their door, lit drop, you know, that's not political. You don't have to talk to anybody. You just drop it at their door. You can, you know, like phone bank for a campaign. You can text bank for a campaign. And that's a lot less divisive, but you're still like giving back to your community in a different way.
Yes, I love the focus on local. There's a saying, like, all politics is local. Like, it's so important. Yeah, it's so important to get involved on a local level, whatever that means for you. And I think for some people, it's like, oh, I have to be with a party, like I have to be with my city council member, or I have to be with the mayor. But it really could just be like organizing your family. It could just be organizing your block. Like that's what it's about. Organizing community. That's how we bring about change. And I do love, you just mentioned trash, parks and rec, a lot of the things that are local. Another thing with that is that's connected to public health. So at the Center for Justice and Law, our theme this year is public health, health, justice, and the law. And a lot of the politics on a local level impact public health, sometimes even greater than the state level. So how does the work that you're doing right now connect to our theme of health, justice, and the law?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think in the year that it's the presidential election, my work before the election, I should say, is a lot more electoral organizing. You know, working on several different campaigns, doing state races, doing national races and local races. So that was really my focus before the election. But now that, you know, the election has passed and, you know, I can take a breather for a hot second and get back into the work, I'm really going to focus on policy and going back into where, like, my roots started, which is policy, community organizing, and getting especially young women involved in local politics, you know, and that's where Ignite comes in, you know, and being a part of Ignite. So yeah, I would say that's where my work will transition as we are, you know, like stepping out of this election period of time, and like how that connects with health, justice, and law. You know, like everything connects with health, justice, and law. You know, that's such a great question, because like you think of you know, like, you know, this is, you know, not a good situation, but you know, like right now in a global pandemic, you know, like there are conversations about healthcare and health that have like taken place like now that should have been taking place before, but now that, you know, that we're in a pandemic, it really shows how broken the foundation of our healthcare system is. So people are like, oh, there is a lot of work to do. And, you know, when you think about healthcare, yes, like national legislation does play a part of it, but, you know, state-wise, you know, like Minnesota Department of Health, you know, like different state departments that have a direct hand in healthcare in our own state also has a huge, you know, say and like a huge impact on healthcare for our communities. And, you know, and so like that's how my work will really connect. I'm really excited to go back into that policy work, either at the local level or state, and getting involved in, you know, like health and healthcare, and making sure that every citizen every person, you know, in our country has healthcare and has access to healthcare. And, you know, and you know, things that, you know, like sometimes people, you know, when we talk about healthcare, we think of, you know, like, you know, preventative care, and, you know, like getting your medicine and prescriptions and all that good stuff. And that's important. But we also have to think about the external factors that, like you said, political determinants of health. And we have to think about those determinants that impact our health, like racism. And we have to address, you know, like racism, systemic oppression. We have to address those systems of oppression that also affect our communities, that
Yes.
also impact the healthcare system. Because, when we have to have these conversations of race and oppression, we have to have when we talk about health, because as we know, like there is systemic racism in healthcare. There, communities of color, especially our Black community, don't always get the care that they deserve, even if they have the healthcare plan, everything, Even, as Black women and men and black people going in to get that healthcare, sometimes they're discriminated against, and saying Black and brown people, that they, their symptoms aren't real, they don't need this type of medicine, and then that will impact them later on when they could have had that prevented early on. So to answer your question, I'm really excited to just get back into policy and really focusing on local and state that impact our healthcare systems. And that ties into all your, the Center for Justice and Law's theme this year, which is health, justice, and law.
Yes, thank you for all of that. I do just have to tell folks, if you don't already know, our current president is in court trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act in the middle of a pandemic. So this is just one example of how, when I talk about the political determinants of health, this has a direct impact on people's health care. And I guess when I talk about public health, obviously you know what I mean, but I'm talking about everything. So when we say access to healthcare, that is one small 10% portion of what public health actually is. So we're also talking about education. We're talking about housing. We're talking about making sure that people have air that they can breathe. They have clean water. These are the aspects of public health that sometimes we don't talk about enough. And I know that you worked with a whole bunch of different organizations on in education policy and in housing work. I'm curious, how do you put these concepts together in your work and in practical purposes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a large, I think for our viewers right now that are watching, it can be really hard to connect at first when you're going into policy, or even going to policies, or maybe you're not even going into it, just understanding it. It's very hard to understand almost how does this all connect. And in order to do the how are we going to fix this, you have to understand the why. We have to understand, why do these systems exist, and how, you have to really zoom yourself out. And one of my mentors told me this, if our society is a tree, you have to always remember at the top of that tree is white supremacy, and that white supremacy goes into and impacts every other part of our life. And if you don't start to see it, envision life in our society that way, you can never really understand how these issues impact each other. So like you said, Raie, healthcare is so important, but that's almost that is a part of public health. And how do I tie all that together? Thinking about it, as let me grab one of those terms that you just said, education. If people do not have access to education and access to a K through 12 school system that really teaches them the importance of having the importance of civic engagement, the importance of going into politics. Why is the politics important? And going into, and having the education to understand the world around us, and really understanding how our systems are built. They can't really go into advocacy work or go into any kind of work into organizing, because we, that education wasn't there in the first place. And I see that now in the people that, are our age, I see, there's a huge lack of civic engagement for folks at our age, not because they don't care. I just genuinely think that they don't know where to start. They never got that education. So, and that's a one issue that impacts, like you said, education, housing. How's anyone going to have access to, how can we talk about healthcare and these bigger systemic issues when they don't even have a place to call home? They don't even have a roof over their head. How can we tell them, you need to, have, this, you need to eat this right, you have to drink, this type of, all this. It's whoa, let's backtrack and, have a roof over their head before we can talk about, it comes from a very privileged and ableist, point of view, when you don't even talk about the bare minimum that people aren't even getting yet when you're talking about public health. So I would say that's how you connect it all, is just really remember that at the top of that tree is white supremacy, and that goes into all the other issues that impact our day-to-day life.
Yes, tell us the truth. It made me think of, there's this quote that I always go back to, but I forgot who it's by, but it says, if you don't understand the way white supremacy operates in America, everything you think you understand will only actually serve to confuse you. So basically saying, if you don't understand white supremacy, everything you think about America will not make sense once you actually start to understand how white supremacy operates. Thank you for sharing that with us. I can't believe we have about 10 minutes left. So I want you to tell us, how can we support the work that you're doing? You are doing 10 different things. How can we support you? Are there organizations that you're working with that we can help elevate? And then, yes, let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I just remembered, I was like, gosh, we only have half an hour. I need to chill with my answers a little bit so we can get into all the questions. Yeah, I think, in my time right now, I think the best way to elevate not only my work, but work of like yours and other organizers and other people, who are advocates and scholars in our communities, like in my own personal perspective, really the first thing you do is just affirm their work. I can't explain enough, I think as women of color in this field, I get a lot of direct messages of people gaslighting me. I get a lot of directed messages of people saying that, I don't know what I'm talking about, that we need to stop it.
Yeah, I know.
Susie, that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I, don't understand these issues, and that saying that like, oh, like white privilege and like white supremacy doesn't exist, and, and like sometimes I get 10 of those messages in a day, and it really gets to you. But then I get one message of people saying like, the work you do, you like keep going, and like we're rooting for you. That can make my day. And I think
I completely agree with you. Like, I feel you on this. I also get a lot of messages that like that, and sometimes I get like one message from someone that I don't even talk to that often that's like, hey, like if you need anything, I just want to say that thank you for what you're doing, and then just says like, sometimes I'm so busy that it's even hard for me to respond. So sometimes when people just say like, just thank you and I'm here if you need me, yes, perfect.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that is a great place to start. I think too, and when I'm doing these events, with the CJL or with other organizations, like even if you can't make it to the event, just sharing that information with your network, because you never know who needs that information in your network. Either if you can't come yourself, or maybe you feel like, I'm good. I know enough about that topic where I don't really necessarily need to go. Just share with your network. It takes 2 seconds to click a button and share it. And you never know who in your network could benefit from that. So I think affirming organizers, sharing their events, and 3, if you have the financial capacity, because not everyone does, to donate to organizations that are truly doing the work. Like I am a part of the Minnesota Youth Collective, and I know Yasmin a couple weeks ago is also a policy fellow at the Minnesota Youth Collective, and we are specifically investing in the leadership of young people, and really providing issue-based advocacy trainings and organizing trainings that aren't accessible to folks of color. So like donating to those organizations. Women for Political Change is also a really great nonprofit organization that's doing the work, et cetera, et cetera. So like it could be a monetary donation to an organization, or it could be just as simply as thanking the people who are doing the work.
Thank you for that. Yes, definitely a huge shout out to Women for Political Change and Minnesota Youth Collective. Like, you all are doing great work. And I see your organizers on the ground actually doing the work, which is so important. One of my final questions is, what's your call to action for folks on this call? Besides obviously like donating if they're able and getting involved with these organizations, is there like a broader call to action, especially now that we're post-election? Is there, to the folks that are feeling, maybe right now they aren't feeling hopeful that, some seats didn't go their way, or maybe the national election is not going to go in their way. What is your words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my call to action really, like this was a presidential election year, and that seat is very important in our country. But, I want to remind all the folks that are in this call, there's elections every year, whether it's local or state or national, there's elections every year. And if you are comfortable, and I might even challenge all the folks on this call, if you can, try volunteering with a campaign. I can't guarantee you'll like it. I really can't, but I can guarantee that you will learn something from it, and like being a part of multiple different campaigns now, I have nothing but respect for people who do campaign work, because it is very hard. And, you know, and you feel good, you know, contributing to a local or state leader that you really are passionate about and want to empower. There's nothing feels better than seeing them, you know, do their thing, doing the work, and seeing them win elections that you were a part of. You know, there's nothing more beautiful. So I say, you know, a call to action: get involved in your community, either neighborhood councils, campaigns. Start small and go from there. And then, you know, I think my other really, you know, call to action is, you know, taking care of yourself. You know, like these times can be very divisive, and like I said earlier, you know, politics can be very divisive at the same time. But don't get bitter from the things you're seeing on the media, because that really doesn't speak to overwhelming numbers of politicians and elected officials in our country and in our own state. So I would say stay hopeful, and really take care of yourself during these trying times. And I think, and, you know, you know, my last call to action would be, you know, like, this was an election. I think a lot of, you know, state and national and local leaders were elected, but, you know, I think people always forget that, like, because, you know, radical self-care. So yes,
Yeah.
you know, and, you know, and I think people forget that, like, when you're campaigning, when an elected official wins, their work isn't done. They just got into office, you know, and, like, keep tabs on them, because, you know, politicians, you know, now I'm going against myself. I said, oh, all politicians are great, but now I'm just like, call them out. But
it could be a both and.
it's a both thing. You know, politicians, you know, it's great that they're elected and everything, but don't forget that after they've been elected, to forget what they promised you they were going to do when they were campaigning. Because politicians are great, you know, coming from someone who is going to politics, politicians are great at saying the things that you want them to, or they want you to hear, and that resonates with you. But then once they're in office, they don't fulfill their promises. They're not passing legislation that's really helping you, and they're listening to those lobbyists and those people who don't really don't reflect the concerns of your community. But then you'll see them in a couple of years come back. It's like, I've been fighting for you for 2 years. And if you don't keep tabs on them, that you're just going to keep voting them in. And that's not, you know, you need to keep tabs on them, hold them accountable, because they work for you at the end of the day. They're still human, they can make mistakes, but they work for you. You voted them in, and it doesn't matter how many lobbyists they what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't matter how many lobbyists they talk to or are in relations with or good in relations with. At the end of the day, those lobbyists don't elect them, we elect them. Mm-hmm. So if they're not treating us well, if they're not, you know, passing legislation that helps us, we have the right to be like, you're gone, bye-bye, bippity boppity, you know, bop out of here, you know. So keep tabs on them is really what I want to say.
Yes, y'all heard it here. Quote, keep tabs. That is a perfect way to end this conversation, because that was my call to action. My call to action is that regardless of what happens in these elections, while I'm personally very, very hopeful at the national level, all of the elections, everyone who has been elected, keep tabs. That's our work going forward. We've been saying vote for months. Now we're saying keep tabs. Mm-hmm. Keep tabs, follow up. The movement is not ending. I always like to say this is actually a comma in the story of our movement. So we are not done. The movement is still going, and we're going to still keep advocating. We're going to still keep showing up, and we're going to keep tabs at that. Thank you so much. This has been such a amazing and like moving conversation. And I'm excited to see the work that you're going to keep doing. I know that you don't stop. So please, I hope you're taking your own advice and also taking care of yourself. It is so important in these times because, you know, like we've been talking about, politics is personal and it hurts sometimes. So it's important to take a step back and make sure that you are putting you first before anything else. You can't help someone else if you can't help yourself. So, and yes, SJ, I definitely say do 2024. She's already an elected woman. It's only moving up from here.
2024, you do for Congress. Watch out. I've made my decision. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Raie. I just want to say a quick thing before we, you know, let folks go. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, all the work that the CJL is doing. Shout out to Susie in this call, you know, and to all, you know, all of our fellows and student coordinators of the CJL, all young Black women scholars. We love, we empower, we support. So go follow their Instagram page, go follow their pages, go, you know, uplift their work, go affirm them. Like I just said earlier, go affirm them. And, you know, I'm really grateful to have been a guest speaker for this. I love tuning into these spotlights. I'm grateful for you all to allow me to, talk about my experiences and my advice for everyone on this call.
Thank you so much, you. It was so great talking to you. I will see you soon in another space.
Oh yeah, I'll see you soon, girlfriend.
Bye.
Bye.
So to everyone else, I just want to remind you that we have our next CJL event on December 4th. It's going to be titled Abolition and the Money Bail System, and we are bringing in the Miriam Kaba to be our keynote speaker. And to Susie in the comments with Weekly with You, I think so. We may have to come back to that in the following weeks. So to everyone that joined us today, thank you. We're going to be doing more CJL Spotlight Conversations coming soon. So be sure to tune in. Thank you. Bye, everyone.